is Pearl Gross. If you don't hear me, please tell me to talk louder. This presentation that I'm going to do right now is something that I've never done. And why is that? You are around 13, 14 years old. I was 7 years old when the Holocaust started in Hungary. I come from Hungary. As a 7-year-old child, what do you remember? Think back. You are 13, 14, 12. Do you remember anything that happened when you were 7 years old? Most children don't, unless it's a very dramatic thing that happened in your life. And that's what happened to me. I lived in Budapest. That was in 1944. When the German occupied Hungary, that was in March 19th, 1944, on a Sunday afternoon. I was the youngest in my family. I had 7 siblings. The oldest were 12 or 13 years older than myself. So when this horror started, as you well know, when something happens important in a family, the adults get together and they discuss it. A child is never paid attention to because it's a child and would not understand what's going on. And it did happen to me. However, what did happen to me is that I realized I had to be afraid. I don't know if you were ever afraid in your lifetime, but I knew something terrible happened. And as things progressed, things got worse and worse. I did not understand it. Again, I was not told what's going on. But still, your instinct tells you something really bad is going on. The first thing was to put on the Jewish star, which you've seen in the auditorium before. And that was, why? Why am I putting this on? But I did not ask. I did not ask. I think, first of all, I didn't think my parents would have explained to me. They didn't think that I would understand. Second of all, I just kept it within myself. And as life went on, that's exactly what happened to me. After the Germans came in, not long after, we were told that we have to go into a ghetto, which you know what it is. Jews together, and they were forbidden to do anything unless they were given permission. You were not allowed to leave buildings. It's like being a prisoner, which is exactly what we were. What happened is, soon after, my family realized that, and they heard it from people who did come from they escaped concentration camps, and they told them what is going to be the end. I am not going to go into that because you all know what was the end. But they had the foresight to do something about it. Now, can I have a little water? I'm sorry. I made a list, but you know what? I'm not very good at reading lists. So, I'll just go from memory. There was a gentleman, a Swedish gentleman, whose name was Raoul Wallenberger. Did any of you ever hear of that? And if you have questions, please ask, because I'm much better answering than telling stories. You raised your hand.
Oh, I heard of him.
What's that?
I heard of him.
You heard of him. Okay. This gentleman was a diplomat, comes from a very good family in Sweden, and he happened, I will have to tell you a little bit about himself. Why am I still standing here? He was as I said, comes from a very prominent family, and he was an architect, and he was sent to Palestine. In those days, it wasn't Israel, it was Palestine. And he got to know the Jewish people. Thank you very much. He was only there a short period of time, and then he heard what's going on in Europe. He decided to go back home. He was a young man of 30, and he saw the persecution of the Jews, and he felt he has to do something about it. he had connections with the diplomats and with the party and the king, King Gustavus at the time, the king. And from step by step, he was sent out to Hungary to see if he can save Jews. But how do you save a Jew? You're a single man. He was sent out as a diplomat, and he was given permits to give to 1,600 Jewish people to choose as he pleases these protected passes, which was signed by the government of Sweden. When he got to Hungary, he realized that's a drop in the bucket. You're talking about 200,000 Jewish people. So he decided to go to next above him, and finally he got 4,500 Jewish passes. What he did with that, he created safety houses, and he called them protective houses, Jewish library, no, Swedish library, research institute, and all these buildings had the insignia of the Swedish government. The Swedish government had an understanding with the Germans that they will allow these people to not to be deported. Now remember, the Germans came in March. The deportation started in May. By July, 400,000 Jews were deported to concentration camps. Budapest had about 200,000 people. By his wit, he decided to make his own passes. He signed his name. It wasn't the officials anymore. He just wanted to make sure that people, at least from Budapest, should not be deported, because he knew the Allies are going to, they were going to come. Germany was losing. How am I alive? My parents had the foresight of getting these passes. I was put into a children's home where only children were there, and my two siblings who were much older than myself. And we were there on their 16. Now, did I ask questions? No. Why? And later on I started to think about it. It was just plain self-protection. I didn't want to think about it. I was afraid. There was this horror. Fear is a horrible thing. However, it came toward the end, I think it was around October, and the Germans said, forget about all this protection. We're going to take all these people out and deport them, because there was a man who was in charge in Hungary. His name was Szalasi, and he was a horrible anti-Semite, and he really wanted to just wipe out the Jewish people in Hungary and Budapest, because Budapest was the only one that still had some Jews remaining. All the outer towns were deported already. Budapest was the big city, and it was difficult. There was politics here, and I'm not going to go into politics, okay? If you want to know about it, you can Google it. One day, they came to this building, and they said, sorry, you are all going to go to deporting. No, children did not go to labor camp. Children were killed, as you well know. They had no use for children. My sisters had the foresight. Now, you've got to pay attention to this, because to this day, I can explain it to myself. I remember my sister, who was 19 years old, when I was 7, that they got hold of my hand, and they walked me out of the building with the Germans standing there. This is my memory to this day. I found out that really never happened. What happened, one of my sisters jumped out of the window, threw me out of the window. She jumped out of the window and walked away from that building. I have absolutely no memory. Subconsciously, I buried it. That's the only explanation. I guess if I would go to a psychiatrist, they could bring it up, but I don't want to know it. Because if I know all the horrors, life would be very difficult, okay? I know I'm a grandmother, but still, I can reason it, but I can't understand it. This is something that is in me. We walked out of that building, and we walked the streets. You can't imagine what it is to walk a street where there's nothing but Germans, or SS, or Gestapo, and then the siren goes off. And you know the bombs are falling. What did we do? We walked. We had nowhere to go. And I remember this, and this is true though. We're walking by a Gestapo building, and one of the Germans told us in German, "Come here, don't go on the street." Now remember, we were not wearing the Jewish stars. And with all the fear within us, we did go over there. And we stood there with the Germans until the siren went off and we walked. We walked some more. Came, it was not dark, but toward twilight. And my sister said, "What are we going to do? Who's going to take us in?" So they decided to go back to this factory that was emptied out in the morning. And 75% of those children were taken to the Danube River and they were shot. If you ever go to Budapest and you drive down there, you will see the shoes of these children in bronze at the edge of the water. To you, it's going to be horrible. To me, the fear, the sadness, the anger is still there. By luck, I survived that. We got back to that building and waited for the war to end. At the end of the war, we went back home to where we lived before the war. And that's when we heard the horrors that happened. I lost a brother in Auschwitz. I had another brother who did survive. I lost my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles. I wouldn't even know the number, I can tell you. Again, I did not ask. I put it out of my mind. I put it out of my mind to save my sanity. Again, when you're 7-year-old, you don't understand. And as you grow up, the horror all of a sudden hits you. And it's very difficult to deal with it. I am in my 70s today. I can't still deal with it. If I hear a story like I did there, the tears are still coming. Last night I went to Yom HaShoah at Havat Torah. I knew the story. I've seen it. I am in denial, and the denial is like this. I don't want to read anything about the Holocaust. I have a husband who reads a lot about it. He went through it, yet he does read it. I can't. My denial is this. I know it. I lived it through. I don't want to know anymore. You should know it. You should know it so it should never happen again. And fight to the last drop of your blood. The mistake people made in those days is they were told to march, and they marched. They shouldn't have. Hindsight. They should have fought. So some of them will get shot, but they wouldn't have been taken to the gas chamber. Again, support Israel. That's the only country that we can go to. And stand up for your rights and be proud to be a Jew. But remember, you, your children, this should never happen.